to achieving fortunes he had never imagined. For this reason, Parker Schnabel pulled the plug on a mine following huge gold discovery. All right, let's get started. Amazing news. Parker Schnabel and his crew had made a breakthrough. A long-lost mine containing unprocessed gold. In all the haste, it had been forgotten. For years, the treasure sat there, unclaimed, awaiting the discovery of someone with an insatiable curiosity. They didn't squander any time in their elation over their discovery. At an incredible rate of speed, they worked, extracting gold. But as they dug further, an uneasy feeling grew. Unearthly artifacts, including peculiar implements and strange markings, began to surface. It seemed like a message had been left there a long time ago. Stay out of this. However, Parker was not the type to turn down a golden opportunity. Despite the cautions, he persisted in his digging. Things got more disturbing as they dug further. Then it was discovered. A moment that altered the course of events. It appeared like the ultimate gold mine when you first laid eyes on the mine. The granite walls were adorned with thick veins of gold that gleamed in the faint light. No evidence of mercury poisoning or antiquated mining equipment was found. Only unprocessed, unrefined gold lay there, ready to be extracted. Without hesitating, Parker claimed the last portion. The price of gold, though, is constant. They didn't merely find treasure when they dug. Danger lurked around every corner of the enigma. It brought back a memory of a tale Park had heard from his grandpa. His grandpa had a fantastic gold hole one day. On a single day, 42 ounces. But after 4 hours, everything shifted. Something out of the ordinary resounded as the dust settled. There was more to it than that. Nothing less than that. No permafrost, no multi-million-dollar fuel-burning machinery, just Parker and his crew, the mine, and an increasing feeling of worry. This is where my life began, and I intend to stay unless I find significantly richer mining ground elsewhere. To them, it was as simple as searching for gold. The truth was that they had unearthed something that no one had ever intended to find. Just one more thing. It was a straightforward, efficient digging operation with incentives, unlike any previous mining operation they had been through before. Over 100 g of gold had been extracted in only a few hours. Something about it seemed wrong, as if it were taken from history. As they continued to dig, more and more questions surfaced. For what reason was this mine abandoned? If it was really great, why hadn't anyone returned? Upon arriving at what ought to have been the most profitable portion, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. Proof that others had also found similar riches before them, and that they had departed quickly. Although Parker was experiencing a fortunate turn of events, not everyone was so fortunate. Somewhere else in the region, another miner had been laboring feverishly to reach the bedrock. Even though it was sucking in cash at a faster rate than it was returning gold, he had invested all of his resources into that one hole. It was a risky bet, the type that Parker was familiar with. He kept a careful eye on things since he knew how quickly fortune could change from good to bad. Kano is unfortunate. And now, for the exciting part. After Parker's crew arrived to remove the scene, they discovered that this wasn't your average derelict quarry. An artifact from the past, preserved in a time capsule. Contemporary geological charts failed to depict the underlying rock formations. Plus, the technology they uncovered was far ahead of its time, and someone had left behind something even more priceless than gold. Yet the other miners in Kano's team were in a state of extreme desperation. The situation would be resolved if they could extract 5 or 6 kilograms of gold from a single hole. However, financial gain was never the only motivation. The pursuit was the main event. The excitement of knowing that a tremendous accomplishment was almost within grasp. Men spent millions more downriver, seemingly carelessly scooping dirt off the riverbanks in the hopes of striking it rich. However, with each scoop came the possibility of good fortune or a sobering reminder of how rapidly things could turn bad. Even though Parker had been in dangerous situations before, the vibe in this mine was different. A history of unsuccessful miners might be heard in its hushed murmurs. Still, Parker felt compelled to press forward regardless of the cautions. He and his teammates saw this as the perfect outcome they had hoped for. Things are heating up as the season draws to a close. It's been tough, and we're currently far behind the season. Since they couldn't fathom why anyone would rush out of such a wealthy location, it's been difficult. Until they sorted out the rest, I thought it was mine to do the best. But the more they excavated, the more unstable the ground got. Then it hit them. Something had been hiding under the ground for ages. At last, they reached the last layer, bedrock, and then they either hit it big or go broke. It was right there. More gold than they had anticipated, more than anybody in the region had discovered in decades. However, there was more to the find than just gold. Along with it, they discovered it. Nothing that could be associated with a known mining operation, including artifacts, markings, and signs. It was not their first visit to this location. They had been here long before Parker's time, and they had hidden something that Parker wasn't sure he wanted to find out. Parker had a decision to make with his wealth in hand. Either stop digging, stop taking risks, and go after something even greater, or you can take the gold and go. His entire life had been devoted to mining. Some riches, however, are just not meant to be discovered. Certain findings alter the course of events. Furthermore, there was a rationale for why they left certain mines unattended. The crew's tensions increased after this finding. Immediate reporting of the find and subsequent transfer to historians and archaeologists for accurate documentation was a desire of some. Others, eager to make the most of their mining skills, wanted to keep going, to delve farther into the enigma, to uncover all of the riches and information that this location held. Quick decision-making was required of Parker as he struggled to balance the excitement of discovery with the burden of responsibility. However, the clock was ticking against them. The antiquated supports that keep the tunnels up were never designed to endure the stresses of contemporary digs. As the wall crumbled, dust settled into the air. A portion of the mine gave way in an instant. They had to reevaluate their whole strategy because their route was blocked. Defeating Rock and Date wasn't the only objective. They were engaged in a struggle against the passage of time as well as the earth, which had concealed its mysteries for ages. Parker had lost all sense of direction as to whether they were seeking answers or gold by this point. Still, despite being weary and anxious, his crew persisted. They were all suddenly aware that they were interdependent on a force greater than themselves. However, a nagging doubt persisted in the recesses of everyone's consciousness. Did they have any idea what they were in for? Weeks stretched into days. The weight of the gold they extracted from the mine served as a constant reminder of the magnitude of the stakes. Although the objects were meticulously recorded, they remained unexplained and left additional questions unanswered. And then, as they were about to conclude, they encountered something entirely out of the blue. Separated from the remainder of the mine was a secret compartment. Still, unmoved, patiently awaiting. Everything changed when they discovered what was within. It wasn't just any old gold mine. Something very old was this. Something discarded over time. Parker realized he could do something different at that same second. Decide whether to stay a wealthy man with the gold he had found or venture into the unknown, put his life and the lives of his crew on the line, and discover the truth hidden under the surface. Mining was now about more than just gold. It revolved around the concepts of history, survival, and discovery. However, Parker would not be creating history for the first time. During the early days of the Gold Rush, claiming land was a separate war. It was excitement, not experience, that Parker and his crew brought to the mining scene. Their inaugural campaign was a nightmare. 15 ounces of gold was all they had managed to cobble together. Nothing compared to the massive windfall they had anticipated. They came dangerously close to crumbling under the weight of bad fortune, inexperience, and reality. But they didn't give up. On the contrary, they risked it all for a second chance. It wasn't an easy road to become legendary miners. They were about to grasp it when they suddenly found themselves without a claim. Yet they hurried instead of tending to their injuries. Approximately 100 ounces of gold was extracted at Quartz Creek, proof that they had more work to do. In order to impress the veterans, a mining partnership headed by a youngster was making significant advances. He was more than just a mall-goer playing in the mud. Even the Hoffmans weren't slacking off. They hauled in more than 800 ounces. Quite a change from their first season. It wasn't pure chance, though, for Parker. The key was to have a plan, stick to it, and be willing to take chances. Everyone felt the need to step up their game as the competition ramped up. Parker, who was sick of playing it safe, set his sights higher and made a bold statement with a bag containing more than 1,000 ounces. This was the most successful season for Todd Hoffman and his team to date. However, in comparison to Parker's ascent, their statistics were beginning to appear insignificant. Every week, nearly 1,000 ounces. This week, about 1,000 ounces. I can't believe it. Which is great. I know, it's crazy. Throughout the year, you have 1,000 of them pounding away at it. This week, it's just a 900. Yeah. The rivalry had evolved from cordial rivalry into an all-out war, and the pressure to succeed was mounting. The moreover 2,500 ounces that Parker caught completely stunned everyone. Nearly 1,400 ounces were brought in by the Hoffmans' refusal to be left behind. This, however, is not the sole occasion on which Parker's gamble paid off. Parker Schnabel was enjoying the high points of his best mining season ever before he set foot on Dominion Creek. More than 8,000 ounces of gold had been extracted from the earth by his group. A hole that had all originated in the well-known Scribner Creek terrain and had a value of about $14 million at the time. A figure of that magnitude was more than impressive. It was evident that Parker remained a top-tier operator, leading a tightly knit group with little inefficiency and maximum output. There was a period during which everything fell into place. Big Red and Sluiceful, the wash plant, were so busy that they hardly had time to cool down in between runs, and the gold continued piling up week after week. However, Parker does not become accustomed to his work as a miner. He was aware that the team's progress would be temporary, even though they were making significant hits.